appreciate the attendance of every single one of you today. Canada needs change to a new government. A new government that will bring accountability to Ottawa. A new government that will get on with addressing the real priorities of ordinary working people and their families. Ordinary people come from all regions and from all walks of life. And in Canada, they come from every corner of the earth. Today I want to talk specifically about how my new government will address the concerns of hard-working immigrants and new Canadians. In recent years, members of Parliament of all parties have become aware of the day-to-day problems in our immigration process and in the processing of files of all kinds through the Department of Immigration. Ces problèmes y comprennent le fameux programme libéral de danseuses nues, ainsi que l'usage des visas à des fins purement partisans. In spring, after the revelation of the government's use of immigration visas for partisan purposes, as well as scandals such as the special stripper program, I asked our senior critic for immigration, Diana Valencia, as well as a number of other Conservative members of Parliament, Deepak O'Brien and Okan Danino participated. I asked them all to conduct a wide-ranging, nationwide consultation with new Canadians on matters of concern today. New Canadians represent the essence of the Canadian experience and the Canadian dream. They have chosen Canada. They left behind generations of history and family connections to embrace the risks and possibilities of political freedom and economic opportunity for themselves and their children. They've come to a country which they can define, not one which will define them. New Canadians are hardworking, they pay their taxes, and they play by the rules. New Canadians bring deeply held values to our shared country. Things like the importance of honesty and hard work, a commitment to children and to family life, and a respect for law and order. These are Canadian values, and these are the core values that I will bring to a new Conservative government. The government This will be a government that shares those values, that shares your values, a government that is on your side. In every cultural community in Canada, there are countless stories of individual success that give our economy and our society the dynamism that only new members can truly bring. For your many contributions, new Canadians truly deserve something better than what we've seen in the recent past. You deserve better than to be manipulated by a minister seeking to trade in visa approvals for political favors. You deserve better. You deserve better than to have your values ignored while your political support is taken for granted. You deserve better than to see your experience, education, and credentials overlooked while the government recruits strippers. Today I want to talk about how my government will reduce the barriers facing new Canadians looking to make a new life in this country. It is tough to immigrate to Canada and find the right job, and it will probably never be easy. In the past, it was often harder, sometimes unjustifiably unfair. That's why, for example, our Chinese-Canadian community deserves an apology for the head tax and an appropriate... Other challenges face immigrants. The biggest barrier to new Canadians is the frequent failure of Canada to recognize legitimate foreign credentials. Wherever this happens, not only are the dreams of individuals and families shattered, but Canada as a whole is deprived of all they have to offer. We owe it to new Canadians to make a determined effort to fix this problem. Un nouveau gouvernement conservateur créera une agence canadienne d'évaluation et de reconnaissance de titres de compétences. C'est là le plus important défi que nous avons relevé dans le domaine de la migration. To do this, a new Conservative government will create a Canadian agency for the assessment and recognition of credentials. This agency will provide a pre-assessment of international credentials and experience before immigrants even come to Canada. It will collect information on foreign credentials to evaluate appropriate comparisons with Canadian credentials. It will work with provinces and professional associations to encourage the recognition or adaptation of foreign credentials in as timely manner as possible. And it will work with employers to encourage a better understanding of these credentials, which are far too often undervalued in the marketplace. All evidence suggests that Canada will only be able to meet its current and future workforce needs by recruiting and taking full advantage of the skills of foreign-trained professionals and tradespeople. This is the most important challenge we must overcome in the area of immigration. Another barrier to immigrants is the government's $975 right of landing fee. The government imposed this fee but failed to speed up the application process. In fact, it slowed down. Despite collecting billions, the backlog of applications in immigration has only grown. Rather than forcing new Canadians to pay nearly $1,000 on their arrival, immigrants and their families should be able to keep more of their money in their own pockets to start a new life in Canada. Notre nouveau gouvernement réduira immédiatement de moitié le droit exigé pour l'établissement. Et notre objectif sera de ramener à $100 pendant la durée de notre mandat. Our government will immediately cut the right of landing fee in half. We will further reduce it as the fiscal situation allows, with the goal of reducing it to $100 in the course of our mandate. Let me just point out that it was Mr. Martin who imposed this fee in his 1995 budget. It was his $975 welcome mat. Through a decade of budgets and surpluses, he never announced any plan to remove it. Through no less than 3 budgets and hundreds of announcements in 2005, he never uttered a peep about its unfairness. He did not do it. He did not even plan to do it when he had the chance. I will do it. Our platform has carefully considered and costed this measure in a way that is doable. Now, friends, hardworking immigrants and new Canadians need a new government. A government that shares your values, a government that shares your priorities. Priorities like providing real tax relief to working families, by cutting the GST, by reducing taxes for small business, and by providing personal income tax relief for transit users, students' textbooks, seniors' pensions, and children's athletic activities, all of which will benefit new Canadians and their families. Priorities like providing choice in childcare, by recognizing that parents need direct help with the cost of raising their children, and that parents, particularly new Canadian parents, may make choices for their families other than institutional daycare, and we will support those choices. Priorities like providing safe streets and safe neighborhoods, where families will not be threatened by crime and children not exposed to drugs and gangs. It's called law and order, and its symbol will be the determination of my government to thoroughly investigate the biggest crime in Canadian history by calling a full judicial inquiry into the 1995 Air India bombing. Will be a critical part of making the 21st century our greatest one yet. New Canadians deserve a federal government that truly respects your efforts and hard work, understands your values, and never takes you for granted. A government that you can feel part of, a new Conservative government. On January 23rd, we say stand up for accountability, stand up for new Canadians, and stand up for Canada.
beaucoup, and I will take some questions.
Monsieur Harper,
Oui.
vous annoncez quelque chose que les libéraux ont annoncé hier.
Ouais.
On a l'impression que vous volez leur idée. Qu'est-ce qui s'est passé?
Évidemment, nous avons travaillé sur cette idée. Nous avons considéré les coûts depuis des mois. Le gouvernement crée des idées à mi-campagne. Et c'était intéressant. Maintenant, le gouvernement Martin commence à faire la campagne contre son propre bilan. Le gouvernement Martin, comme j'ai dit en anglais, le gouvernement Martin a eu plusieurs occasions, même récemment, même dans un budget juste avant le déclenchement de cette élection, de proposer une telle idée. Je pense que ce gouvernement réagit seulement à sa perte de l'appui dans des communautés culturelles de ce pays.
Mr. Harper, the Liberals have counted on the support of immigrants for decades. How important is it for you in your bid to become Prime Minister to get that vote, and can you do it?
Well, it's very important for us. I have, I think, made. I think even my friend Con would agree. I think I've probably made no conservative leader in history has made greater efforts to make sure that the Conservative Party become culturally diverse than I have. My view has always been that conservatism in this country should be defined by ideas and principles, not by color. And I think we've made tremendous progress in a few short years. And I believe we can win an ever-growing share of immigrant and new Canadian vote. And I believe if you look at the things we stand for, and if immigrants look at the things we stand for, new Canadians look what we stand for, and compare it to what the Liberals stand for, they'll see that they agree with us 90% of the time.
Mr. Harper, why did you simply reduce the head tax? You're offering to reduce it and not eliminate it. Doesn't it simply keep them as second-class citizens?
Well, look, I'm for eliminating. I'm just not going to make a promise I'm not sure I can't keep. We cut it dramatically right away, and we'll try and phase it out. I say the goal is to get it down to $100 by the end of the term. But if we can eliminate, we'll eliminate it. But I got to tell you, we've been working on these things for months. We've been working on a platform that has a lot of ideas that cost some money. We're not making this up on a campaign plane in the middle of an election campaign. And I know when we heard this report yesterday, the Liberals knew we were going to make an immigration announcement. We were going to come out with this. We were saying, well, some said, let's just eliminate it. We're not going to play that game. We're not going to make up numbers in the middle of a campaign. This promise is going to cost the Treasury $500 million. That's what we've costed it. It's a considerable amount of money. If we can eliminate it, we will. But as I say, we're not going to embellish a promise just because Mr. Martin now wants to run against his own record.
Mr. Harper, do you think that Mr. Martin's campaign is in disarray? Yesterday they had 3 different messages. You've got, they rushed out their head tax announcement last night. You've got the healthcare leak to CP. Do you think that they're in a state of panic? I mean, he had his so-called major speech in Winnipeg. Wow.
Well, I'm not here to analyze the other campaign. I think that Mr. Martin's messages are full of contradictions. Mr. Martin began the campaign by saying he wanted to run on the government's record. So far, every announcement in this campaign the Liberals have made, whether it's on crime, whether it's on health care that's coming, whether it's on immigration, are direct contradictions of the government's record. They're actually running against their own record. And I think it's an incredible display. I should also mention the other message of Mr. Martin yesterday was once again, two things he did once again to start musing about Andre Boisclair being the Premier of Quebec and to once again question my patriotism. Let me just say 2 things on that. First of all, I'll say what I said to every speech. We've got the most federalist Premier in Quebec in my lifetime, Mr. Charest. He's a great friend of this country. I'm going to work with Mr. Charest, embrace his ideas on Canada, and make Quebec a stronger partner within the Canadian Federation. on the issue of loyalty to Canada, I don't know any party leader in the history of this country, other than Mr. Martin, any party leader, who ever aspired to be Prime Minister, who ran his life under the flag of Barbados and Liberia and tried to avoid paying taxes in this country. That's Mr. Martin's record on his love of Canada.
For democracy is when they also a liberal candidate of Islamic State. Obviously, they have close ties to the Conservative Party. The GTA organizer is on board, one of the candidates is on board, the organizer for the candidate, and this writing is on board. Do you think you should apologize for this?
Well, first on the first count, I can just say this organization, whatever it said on its own. I'm not frankly aware of the statement. I'm not frankly quite aware of the statement or the incident you're referring to, but I certainly can take a look at it later to give you more information.
Mr. Harper, how many immigrants should we be letting into the country on an annual basis? And how do we get people not to settle in Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, but for instance immigrants to settle and create jobs and prosperity in Atlantic Canada, northern and rural parts of Canada? The numbers of immigrants, and how do we get people to go not to Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver?
Yeah, those are both interesting questions. On the first one, look, I don't tend to view immigration as a numbers game. The goal, there's been a goal, as you know, to get 1%, equivalent to 1% of population, a goal we've fallen far short of. I think we're probably going to continue to fall short of goals. I think what's got to change in the immigration area over the next decade or so will be Canada more actively recruiting immigrants as opposed to just passively accepting applications, because I think we're going to not only need immigrants, but we're going to find the battle to get immigrants is going to get more and more difficult. On the issue of how we get immigrants to settle outside of the major metropolitan areas, that's a tough question. I know it's one that Diane and others have given some thought to. It's not easy. Some have suggested that there be restrictions, but I frankly think it's very difficult in a charter sense to apply restrictions, mobility restrictions to Canada once they enter Canada. And I mean, historically, the tendency is that immigrants come to job opportunities. That's why they come to Canada. It's hard to send people where they don't have job opportunities. So I think it's one of the reasons why the Conservative Party, why we do put emphasis on a plan to help develop rural Canada and help shore up the economy of the core industries of rural Canada, because it's a chicken and egg problem. We need immigrants to stimulate the economy, but we also need those economic opportunities to encourage immigration.
How do you plan to convince?
De ce dossier, beaucoup de fédéral a aussi un rôle important. C'est le fédéral qui détermine à la fin l'immigration. C'est le fédéral qui détermine ailleurs au monde les besoins du marché du travail du Canada. Un dialogue et une collaboration de résoudre ces problèmes. C'est le cas que tous ces problèmes ne peut pas être résolu seulement par le fédéral. Mais c'est nécessaire à cause de...
Les avocats, pour les médecins, pour les ingénieurs, pour les comptables,
vous
n'avez pas vraiment le pouvoir de changer leurs règles.
Non, oui,
non,
c'est vrai et c'est nécessaire. Le rôle du fédéral, c'est pour ces choses une coordination. Mais quand les provinces visitent Ottawa, par exemple, pour demander de l'aide pour le système de santé, c'est nécessaire pour le fédéral de faire l'emphase sur l'importance de résoudre des problèmes dans la profession des docteurs, par exemple. Mais il y a beaucoup d'autres cas. Et si on parle avec des immigrants et des nouveaux Canadiens, ce ne sont pas seulement des professions réglées où il y a des problèmes. Souvent et plus souvent, selon les immigrants eux-mêmes, les problèmes sont dans des professions non réglées, où il n'y a pas d'information au marché du travail. Et il y a beaucoup d'idées préjugées sur des normes, sur sur des qualifications des immigrants. Et dans ces domaines, le gouvernement fédéral, pour collectionner de l'information, pour aider la compréhension des employeurs, et évidemment, avec ces informations, ça va aider aussi des immigrants, des nouveaux Canadiens eux-mêmes, de trouver leurs droits envers des tribunaux au niveau provincial.
How do you plan to convince some of these professional organizations to work on making it easier for immigrants?
Well, I'll just say what I said in English. There are two issues. Obviously, unregulated professions. The ability of the federal government to impose a solution is limited. But the federal government can certainly collect data. The federal government has a role, obviously, in dealing with intergovernmental finance. The federal government has a role where it can apply pressure to provinces and professional associations to make sure that standards are reasonable. And we will do that. But, immigrants themselves will tell you, and we've done a lot of consultation on this, that the bigger problems are actually often in the non-regulated professions that most people work in, where there are a lot of prejudices and lack of information about foreign credentials, and foreign credentials are often automatically discounted. The federal government can certainly get that kind of information, to get that kind of information out widely in the workplace. And frankly, it can assist ultimately, that will be an assistance if there isn't change, to immigrants themselves who will have recourse in front of provincial tribunals that will judge such issues.
Mr. Harper, on your remark a moment ago about where Mr. Martin regulated ships, obviously you're questioning his patriotism, right?
Well, I'm saying that people in a glass house shouldn't throw stones.
One of me against 100 of you.
No. That's unfair odds for us.
Totally unfair. But is that really where you want to go? With 2 weeks still to go in the campaign. Are you going to get that low, really?
Terry, Mr. Martin has questioned my patriotism. I am only stating the facts. The fact is, Mr. Martin lived a good deal of his professional life under the flag of other countries, and that Mr. Martin constantly tried, and was successful, I gather, in avoiding paying taxes in Canada. That's the record. So Mr. Martin wants to have a debate about patriotism. I'll just put the facts in front of the Canadian people. They can judge. This side of the room.
Mr. Harper.
Mr. Harper, you talked about the Air India inquiry.
Yes.
And how you said that there was going to be a full judicial inquiry. So what are you going to do differently than what's being done now? And
Well,
have you been in touch with those families to ensure that they're finally going to get justice?
We have been in regular contact with the families for some time now. The present government has not agreed to a full judicial inquiry. In fact, I'm not quite sure where they are. They agreed to some kind of partial inquiry, and last I heard, the plan was for Mr. Ray to head it, which I understand was not satisfactory to most of the families. So, obviously before we detail the final terms of reference, we're going to want to do a final consultation with the families, but the clear consensus among the families is they want a full judicial inquiry, and that's what we've long advocated.
Mr. Harper, on the law and order agenda. Mr. Harper, on the law and order agenda.
So I'll take this.
It appears that the Liberal strategy from here on in is going to be to bury your daily announcements with a flood of their own. How do you counter that?
Well, to a large degree, I think we've countered it by getting most of our announcements out early on, making it clear to people that, these things are not being made up in the dying days of a campaign. And we've got them out, we've communicated them, we're going to continue to do so. I think the Liberal Party is going to have a lot of trouble when, as I say, they've had 12 years, this Prime Minister in office for a year, 3 budgets, hundreds of announcements in the lead up to this election. I think it's going to be difficult at this point to convince anybody that there's any credibility behind a whole slew of new announcements.
Just take a couple of minutes.
Take Adam.
27 community groups came together yesterday and said that it's not tax cuts that their communities that are at risk need, it's investment. It's investment in housing, it's investment in jobs, retraining programs for youth. They've rejected your tax credit plan. They want to see federal involvement in their communities. What are you promising these communities at risk of experiencing in the city?
Well, as I've said, we're prepared to, part of our program on crime will be to fund crime prevention programs. And we've said that will be part of the mix. But look, other parts of the mix, and particularly at the federal level, the most important federal role is the regulation of the criminal code itself. We plan to toughen the criminal code, make sure there are mandatory prison sentences for serious, violent, repeat offenses. We've been consistent on this for years. That's what we're going to do. In other areas,
When do we see the prevention
look,
part of
other
the
tax reductions that we're talking about in our platform are not. They're not necessarily there as crime prevention measures. Tax reduction is to make sure that the population of this country, which has been grossly overtaxed for a decade now, gets some of their own money back in their own pockets so they can actually participate in this wealthy economy the government keeps telling us we have.
When are we going to see the prevention program? Sorry,
They have to be developed in consultation with other levels of government because they're primarily the jurisdiction of other levels of government.
Minister Harper, my question is, I have two questions.
Sorry, okay, go ahead. Are you with the media? Yeah.
Yes,
Go ahead.
yes.
Okay, great.
From Pakistan Media,
Yeah.
Karma Radio and Newspaper.
Yeah.
I have two questions. One about bill is already there, Bill C-36. It's not Canada. We don't feel like it's Canada. Bill C-36, are you going to do something for that bill? It's SWORD, especially for Muslim community. My other question is this, that the people from Muslim countries, hundreds of people, they want to come here and they want to invest their money in business. I have seen with my own eyes, 3 days before, one person, Pakistani person, he came from Saudi Arabia on business purposes. He wanted to invest millions of dollars here, but 6 hours, they have been questioning him 6 hours, and he just changed his mind. He said, whatever that is, I don't want to come and I don't want to invest money here. So, especially if there is name Muhammad, it's green passport, he has to stay there. So what you are going for those people?
Well, just very quickly, I can't comment obviously on an individual case, but we have heard a lot of these kinds of cases, not just in the case of the Islamic community. I'll just say that we obviously take these seriously. In terms of Bill C-36, it is subject to review. We are going to review it ourselves. We haven't made any definitive plans yet on how we're going to change it, but we recognize there are some problems with it.
Une courte question en français, monsieur. Qu'est-ce que vous pensez de la figuration de M. Duceppe de réintroduire un programme qui est commandé pour supporter des événements régionaux au Canada?
C'est une suggestion intéressante de la part de M. Duceppe. Je peux dire que ce n'est pas le plan à ce moment de notre gouvernement. Je suis toujours prêt d'examiner les suggestions des partis de l'opposition. Si M. Duceppe s'intéresse à aider un gouvernement fédéral à promouvoir le Canada au Québec, je suis très ouvert à cette idée.
We'll take one last question, please.
Okay, one last question.
For the Harper rule, and Joe Bolton said that you're going to fix the situation of the undocumented workers in Canada. Now it has happened. Do you have any plan for that?
Fix the word of which?
Undocumented workers.
Undocumented workers. We have not, this is a problem we're examining with some care. We haven't made a decision on that. What we're trying to balance there is how we're going to deal with the fact that there are many people who are undocumented, who may have been illegal, who are working and well established in the country and contributing to the country. And obviously want to address that, but at the same time, we don't want to do it in a way that actually encourages illegal immigration in the future, because we want people to, obviously, and most immigrants do work through the process. We want to encourage people to work through the process.
We'll just take one last question.
Sur le ton de cette campagne,
Yeah, Mr. Harper, you said you go to a policy for the Chinese tax issue. Can you specify a little bit? And are you supporting Mrs. Mark's bill?
On the apology was in Mr. Mark's original bill, the concept of an apology, and that bill was approved by my shadow cabinet, and that's the position of the party. Now, I understand that bill was watered down in committee to try and get a compromise, but the position of our party has always been that we support an apology. This was a wrong, and the government of Canada should definitively apologize for that wrong and take take reasonable redress measures.
Mr. Harper, have you got a transition team in place?
Mr. Harper was able to hit several very important topics today. Our Pickering Scarborough East riding is very diverse, and we're looking to make improvements on recognition of credentials primarily. I have people working on my own campaign team because they haven't been able to get their credentials recognized for as long as 10 years. One gentleman, for example, with a civil engineering degree from Afghanistan, has been trying very hard to get his credentials recognized without success. We're very pleased we're able to move forward on that. I know that the Chinese-Canadian communities are very pleased that we will offer, as a government, an apology to the Chinese-Canadian people for the head tax. And the Air India Judicial Inquiry is also something that we've been waiting for a long, long time. So we're very pleased with the whole package of announcements that are made today.
Do you mind if I borrow that minute, sir?
我想問你今日對於 Stephen Harper 嗰個 immigration policy 有咩睇法？
我覺得有啲好多新意啊，因為而家嗰個 government 係未人做到嘅，佢已經提咗出嚟啦。例如話喺新移民啦，有啲喺佢嘅原居地係有個醫生牌啊，或者係已經係一個scientist 啊，科學家之類啦。咁如果佢嚟到呢度咧，揾唔到份適當嘅工作咧，而需要係揸的士啊，做啲倒垃圾啊，咁倒垃圾可能都唔得，因為咧呢度咧有倒垃圾嘅嗰啲人嘅，即係有條件先可以做得到。咁所以咧變咗佢哋好慘咯。咁但係如果係能夠好似佢嘅提議咧，就喺原居地嗰處咧攞晒啲credential 係證明到佢係有咁嘅資格，可以俾佢喺呢度咧係繼續做嘅話咧，我覺得係一個非常之好嘅政策。
多謝你對於今日 Stephen Harper 嘅 immigration policy 有咩睇法？
我覺得佢唔係有好多新意，因為差唔多，如果大家記憶猶新嘅話，每一次大選前佢都會提出點樣對待啲新移民嘅，但係之後大選之後又唔見有其他嘅行動啊或者提議啊，譬如講話新移民嗰個海外嗰個資歷啊嘅認可啊。大選前個個都提，但大選後又真正做咗出嚟，咁多年來唔係好多嘢啫。不過今日佢有一個少少新意嘅地方咧，就認為移民政策加拿大移民政策咧係應該主動去吸納移民，唔係被動咁去審閱佢哋嗰啲申請。呢個一點係好有意思嘅，因為能夠主動咁樣去吸納佢哋咧。加拿大嘅得益就好過而家咁樣被動咁樣去審住佢哋嘅呢啲文件，因為嚟嗰啲人未必係真正加拿大需要嘅人。
他讲了一些很多方向，包括其中有一个 immigration policy， 比如说他没有说数目值到底是多少，不过他提到1%。那么换句话说，将来他上台的话，不但是会做到这个1%，同时会确定这个整个移民的手续会比今天的会更完善。那换句话说，这个数目字就会，换句话说。移民的时间会缩短，这是他今天要跟我们强调的这件事。
Today, Stephen Harper, the Conservative Party leader, announced two things on the immigration file. One is the establishment of a federal body that would vet and evaluate foreign credentials and experience so that immigrants to Canada would be able to know exactly what credentials would be accepted and what they would have to do to obtain Canadian equivalency. This will help a great deal because so many people coming to Canada aren't sure of getting a job here, and they need to have those credentials validated right up front. We've also announced that we would cut the right of landing fee in half immediately, and so families coming to Canada would have much more of their own money in their own pockets to help them get established and have a good start in our country and start building the life that they came to Canada in order to realize.